This is the Just Press Pause podcast, episode 2, Moisture Tongue. I'm Andrew Kozak, and if you're not sure what moisture tongue is, we're going to talk about it coming up in water cooler weather. First off, I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody is safe. We are still in the midst of our COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic as we shelter in place, social distance, isolate, everything that we don't love to do, but everything that we need to do to keep safe. We're still in that. Now, it is not healthy to pay attention to the news cycle 24/7. Some people that work in news, like myself, well, we do listen to it probably more than others. And the good thing that I'm noticing in the last couple of days is that we're starting to see some positive signs here that all of this social distancing is working and that the curve is starting to flatten and in some cases actually go on a downward trend. We're seeing some less hospitalization record numbers. We're starting to see some less deaths. And we're starting to see signs that things are starting to turn around a little bit. So much so, actually, that some of our elected officials are starting to roll out a phase 1 of how things can reopen, whether it's restaurants in a limited capacity or even gyms, which I'd be excited about going back. I think all of us want to get out and do some more activity instead of kind of just staying at home. So a lot of us are looking forward to that. We're just going to have to see if everything starts to continue that positive climb. It's the one climb that we want to see, right? We want to see the positivity. We want to see people get better. So we're hoping that we're headed in the right direction. I guess time will tell. But for now, staying in place, sheltering at home, and doing all the things that we're supposed to do that the scientists and the medical experts tell us, it's really the only way that we're going to be able to combat this thing. So that gives me time to do this. Appreciate you listening or watching if you're watching on YouTube. At Andrew Kozak TV, by the way, is where you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on Snapchat. And also, same channel on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. All right, with that said, let's start things off since I am a meteorologist with your water cooler weather. All right, our water cooler weather of the day is moisture tongue. Have you ever heard your local meteorologist talk about that on TV? I have. A lot of my colleagues have. I've used the term moisture tongue before. So what is it? Well, a moisture tongue is responsible for such a huge number of significant weather events, whether it's from severe weather in the spring and summer to even big blizzards and snowstorms in the winter. A moisture tongue starts with a south wind around an area of high pressure. High pressure, you have clockwise winds. The weather's usually going to be very nice if you're underneath an area of high pressure. But as that moves off toward the east, the winds around it are going to be coming up from the south in your area. Well, what is to our south? I'm not talking about the next state down. I'm talking about all the way down past the border, Louisiana over toward Florida, the Gulf Coast, Alabama. Well, it's the Gulf of Mexico. And that is a very warm body of, well, water. And what that does, that south wind, is it transports, it evects all of that moist air into the midsection of the country, starting with the deep south, moving up into the mid-south, moving into the Ohio, Tennessee valleys, and even moving as far north as the Great Lakes. So you've got this area of a south wind transporting all of this moisture. Well, what's the spark to set it off? A cold front. And once that cold front meets up with all that moisture that's in place, you're going to be talking about thunderstorms, significant, heavy, even flooding rain sometimes. And of course, on the flip side, in the winter, significant ice and or snowstorms. So as meteorologists, we look for that transport of warm, moist air, that moisture tongue that it creates almost graphically in the midsection of the country to forecast for any significant high precipitation events. If there's just not a lot of moisture there, if the tongue doesn't go up far enough and a cold front comes through, well, you might get a couple of showers, you might get a couple of thunderstorms, but really, if the moisture is lacking, you're not going to get much of anything. So that's why it's so important to look for that transport, that tongue of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. It controls so much of our significant weather across so much of our country. All right, well, that's your weather lesson of the day. Of course, your water cooler weather will be explained with illustrations and pictures and sometimes video if you're watching us here on YouTube. In the meantime, let's get this thing started.
You're listening to the Just Press Pause podcast with Andrew Kozak.
All right, my guest today joining me is Tim Trad from Onlyincbus, and we're going to be talking about how Columbus, along with so many other cities, of course, are helping out everybody that's in need right now with what's going on with coronavirus, COVID-19. Tim, thank you so much for joining me here on Just Press Pause.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So, yeah, I just want to go ahead and start off with a little bit about you, because I think what you do is so interesting. I think all the places that you partner up with are so interesting. How did you get into Onlyincbus?
Yeah, that's a good question. I ran, it's such a long story, but the way that this specific account started was I moved back. I'm from Columbus. I was adopted by a family that moved from New York when AEP relocated their headquarters, which I've posted that video a couple of times, the like hype video that AEP sent out, which is pretty cool. It's about a 15-minute video. If you haven't seen that, you should check it out. But my dad moved from New York City to, well, my whole family did, but he worked downtown in AEP. They moved their headquarters to Columbus, and then they adopted me. I was actually born in Lima, Ohio. I've never lived there, never spent any time up there, but they kind of moved and then got me. So they just did a full Columbus relocation and got a kid. And I grew up here, and then I left for a number of reasons. But when I moved back to Columbus, I was coming out of a music career, and I was building an agency. And long story short, the account was more of a resume. I saw a lot of people in this space, their buzzwords, social media, SEM, SEO, all these things that companies knew they needed, but maybe didn't understand. And so rather than trying to sell without any, if you're going to hire somebody, you want to see that they can do what they say they can do, right? And I always say, I'm not going to hire a fat trainer, I'm not going to, if you want to see the person, you're not going to hire a broke person to manage your finances, right?
Right.
And you're not going to hire some kid who doesn't know what he's talking about to do your social media, right? No, every company does that. Their friend's cousin tweets, so they hire him, and then they get no results, and then they say Twitter doesn't work. Or whatever network it was. And so I lived in Columbus, and I drove a Land Rover. So I started 2 Instagram accounts, one called Rover Group and one called Onlyincbus. And so I started telling the story of my city, and that was a community built around a shared location. There's a lot of interest, but the location is the main theme. And then the Rover Group was not necessarily a location, but the interest was a shared specific thing, being the Land Rover. So one was very location based, one was very interest based, and then I built those.
I think it's so interesting because so many cities, and I've lived all over. I grew up in New York City, but I moved when I was about 17, went to college, and then moved for my first job in TV. But I lived all over the place, and I feel like it is so difficult sometimes to get people to rally around positivity in a city, things going on. And, it certainly, I'm sure, hasn't been always easy, but now you have this Onlyincbus Instagram account. You have nearly 75,000 followers and growing. I mean, that's got to be just amazing to kind of see where you started from and see where you are now.
Yeah, I grew up as one of those kids that kind of always wanted, I went to a private school because of where we grew up, and the sports, I thought I was going to be a professional athlete growing up. And our sports teams were always pretty mediocre, and our size was small. So getting noticed at it, it's not impossible, but it's it's already an unlikely thing to get drafted. And then to try to get, somebody to come look at you from a school that has 12 people in the class or whatever. And so I remember growing up, everybody wanted to get out. And I kind of bought into that as a kid. Like, if I only lived here, the grass is, whatever cliche you want to say. But I've been very fortunate. I've been to every state. I've been to like 70, 80, I don't even know how many countries now. And there's a lot of pluses and minuses places. Everybody was like, oh, I'm going to move to California when I get up. And then they all came back because they were like, oh, I don't have enough money. Or like New York City, for example, I've spent a lot of time there. You got to have like $10 million to live like a 6-figure salary.
You could be making a great salary in Columbus, and you transfer that over to New York, and you're living in a small 500 square foot apartment.
Yeah. And that's, if you love what you're doing, then that's great. It's not all about money. But being able to experience all of that and coming back, I felt this kind of obligation to be like, actually, we have it really good here. And there's a lot of things are changing and nothing's perfect, but the dollar goes really far here. The, fashion, we're third in a distant, like the top 3 are very far ahead of the rest. Like New York and LA are making huge strides, but behind them, we are the clear number 3. And there's, we have all these companies here for that, but just the opportunity here, the startups, there is money. It's not like it is in Silicon Valley, but there is money here. There's a lot of pluses all the way around, and so I feel like that story needed to be told. And I think, again, long story short, the response proves that story was there, and there are people that want to hear it. And instead of saying, I just need to go here to be successful, realizing that maybe I need to change something about me, or change how I do something, or change up my attitude, and then I can be successful wherever I am. You don't have to stay in Columbus, but the
No, and I
opportunities
think
here.
attitude is so much everything about it because, so many places I've lived. Have you ever heard of the term cave people?
I mean, like
I don't
cavemen, like in school, but that's about it.
No, okay, so citizens against virtually everything.
Oh
I've
no, I
lived
meet a lot of
in
them though. No.
Right. I mean, look, every city has it, right?
Mhm.
But I feel like this is the first city, and I've lived in, I'm not going to put down any other cities I lived in. There's a lot of pluses and, some minuses to every place. But this is the first place I've lived, and I've been here for about a year and a half now. It just seems like an idea gets passed in, whether it's from somebody like yourself or somebody that's an elected official or just somebody with a great idea, and people lap it up because they see the potential. They see, not just 50 yards ahead, they see 50 miles ahead and where things can end up. And I think this city has taken a lot of chances on things that end up being immensely successful. I mean, I look back at history of like the short north and pictures of what that looked like just
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago. It is pretty amazing. So for you to come in and kind of embrace it, especially after living in a place like New York City, I mean, you kind of feel like from there it's all downhill, but it really necessarily is not at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of good and bad in that. I experienced a lot of the cave that you're talking about with parking. There was a couple things that the city missed. It was everything needs to be drivable and parkable and public transportation. So back when AAP moved, they had a spread mentality versus a downtown. And whatever, you can lobby for either side, but these smaller developments outside the city made it a driving city versus accessible, which at the time gas was cheap and we didn't realize we were destroying the planet. Now everything's a 20-minute drive if you go all these different places, and then stuff downtown was closing. So there was like a 20-year gap at least where city center closed because there was nobody there. The people just started moving downtown, and I'm actually seeing them dump all these truckloads of dollars into Easton again, and all these developments kind of far away, that I'm like, are we doing the same thing? And it kind of worries me a little bit, as opposed to the that like downtown mentality. Not that everybody needs to live downtown, but if you want to build a city like New York, imagine driving a car in New York City and being like, I can't find anywhere to park. People would just be like, what's wrong with you? But that here, people are like, no matter what we build, they ask about parking, and they want it to be free. And so that's the only, everything other than that I've experienced is like pretty forward thinking. That's just the two caves that I get when I talk to people.
The parking issue has been in every city I've ever lived in. It's always been, but what about parking? You say, hey, we've got this great arena. We're going to get, A talent artists that are going to come in. We're going to get, sports. And then the first question is, but what about parking? So I know that's a limitation. Here's what I find interesting too, is that Columbus, I believe, and you might know this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we are the largest city in the country without some sort of light rail or public trans system in that sense, other than buses, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I sat down with a couple people actually. One of them that I talked to extensively on my podcast was with Shannon Hardin, who's the city council president, and we talked about that. And there's like stuff in the works, but for the most, I mean, I haven't done infinite research on it, but for the most people that I've talked to, there just isn't like we just didn't do it. I don't really understand. Yeah. And I'm not blaming anybody specifically, but even when we talked to him, he was just like, yeah, we're like trying to experiment with a bus only lane, but that's still just a car, and it's not like he did something wrong. But when I talked to him about it, there never really was a plan for it, and it never got done. And so, yeah, it just, and I feel like we're too far along. We can't just dig up High Street and throw a thing underneath it. From what I understand, I'm not a city planner. I don't know anything.
Every time I think about it, I used to live on High Street. When I first moved here, I got an apartment literally right there at High and Rich. Yeah. And it was great. And I was thinking, well, a train would be perfect because they had that, the free connector bus. What is that? The
circulator?
The circulator. But there's no room for it. I mean, you'd have to put something elevated. I mean, it would just be obviously a lot of money. I think it would take years. But at some point, I feel like with the growth that this city is having in the area, there is a need for it. I think maybe in the future, and especially when more people with the mentality like yourself and people come in and see the potential of what this city can actually, even be better, like having something like that. I mean, I guess never say never.
Yeah, and we're set to double in like less than 30 years too, the population. Shannon had a full thing about it. I don't remember the specifics, but the the amount of people living it's increasing rapidly. And if we continue on this pace, something's going to have to happen. And I don't think it has to be a city. I don't think you have to live in a city, but you can move out of the city if you want to have parking in a house and a yard. And if you live in the city, then you know what I mean? We're trying to mix. I feel like too many people are trying to mix the two. You can kind of only have one or the other. But
well, and then you've got these pockets too. Like look at up in Dublin. Look at what they're doing with Bridge Park. I mean, that's sort of like it's a downtown in itself.
That's what I'm saying is like that's cool and all, but if you're trying to make boroughs before you have a New York City, I don't know. I'm not hating on Bridge Park, but we did that with East End and it killed City Center.
Right.
So rather than having people come to a central place, they're trying to build downtowns and everywhere, but they're not downtowns, you know? And so then you have parking and driving and so I'm curious to see how all that goes. I have my personal, the way I like it doesn't mean that it's right. But any successful city doesn't have, like, there's not 5 Chicagos spread out all over Chicago. You know what I mean? There's a big downtown. There's obviously pockets of it, but I don't think we're at a pocket area yet based on our population.
Well, and the nice thing also, like our downtown, and again, after living in so many different cities, I feel like it's got so much potential for growth, but it's not like everything is just potential. I mean, there's a lot there. The framework is there. There's already, there's times where I'll go down High Street in the middle, of course, not right now during, COVID-19 pandemic, but when things are normal, you could go down High Street and it's like you're in a much bigger city than you're actually in. People are walking around, the stores are open, the restaurants are filled. The further around you go, it seems like it wasn't like that 10, 15 years ago. So, I mean, there is good growth here.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens too, because as someone who, I do love the short north, but there's other pockets that are a little, they're losing the ability to have whatever you want to call them, mom and pop smaller shops, because the cost. I looked recently into bringing a store from outside of Columbus to Columbus, and they'd have to sell 10 times what they're selling in Cincinnati to be in a similar location here because of the cost. And again, I don't think I can fix everything, but when the what they're demanding for people base, sign a 5-year lease at these exorbitant rates, you're only going to get chains. And so I'm a little scared that we can lose our character a little bit. Not the chain, I love Shake Shack just as much as anybody else. And I'm not burn them down or anything, but if you have a whole strip of that, you kind of turn into, Times Square versus somewhere else. And so, yeah, I think we'll see what happens. It's growing. There's other areas that stores are going to pop up where it's a little bit cheaper. And I think that's going to expand the locations and make you look a little bit harder to find the cool stuff. And if the cool stuff's super easy to find, then it's not as cool.
Well, I also think it's kind of important now for the people in charge to kind of start thinking about, and when I say people in charge, I mean the ones that are setting the rent too, to start thinking about our recovery coming out of the pandemic, because you're going to have a need for these mom and pop stores to stay open, or people that want to bring them here, or people that want to open one up. I mean, it's going to get tougher and tougher. Money's tight for everybody. Yeah. We are fortunate to be in a city like Columbus, where, as you said in the beginning, our dollar can stretch here. I think the recovery here could probably be a little bit easier than some of the other cities where things are more expensive from the get-go. So I think people need to start thinking about that too. I would much rather see us recover and bring back local mom and pop places in a place like the Short North than just have, the Shake Shack, which, by the way, I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you saw this today. Shake Shack gave back their small loan.
Oh, no way. That's awesome. I've been reading about just the complete, can you cuss on this podcast? I don't want to say bad words if I'm not allowed to.
This is mine. Go ahead.
Just the complete fuckery that is all of that. Like, I've been reading about who's getting money and who's not. There's companies that don't need it getting millions, and there's local companies like Yellow Brick Pizza. I saw something about them. They applied and were not given anything, whereas other companies are given millions of dollars. And so I'm not getting political. I'm just saying somebody's doing something wrong, and if we think that they're going to take care of the little guy, we're looking out for ourselves. And I agree with you. It's going to change.
No oversight.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's going to change a lot. I think a lot of businesses, I'm very curious, as someone who has owned my own businesses and been responsible for years of that, where's the next check going to come from? How are we going to pay everything? Most people are not prepared too. And part of me as someone who has to deal with everything is it's not, man, I don't want to sound insensitive, because people are like, oh, we can't pay rent. And I'm like, well, yeah, then safe. Don't buy shoes or whatever. But I'm there too sometimes. I get it. And but I think there's going to be a forced learning from this of people who the average American can't afford a $400 emergency.
Right.
I hope that
I
this
think
terrible
that,
thing brings an awareness that, okay, I'm not untouchable. Things can happen. And yes, I want everybody to help each other out 100%, but like, make sure you have your own back if this happens again. Have a nest egg. Don't buy the stuff you want. Wear the same shoes a little bit longer. Drive a cheaper car. I'm all for having nice stuff, but make sure that your ass is covered so if something happens again. And I think that, and then businesses, there are so many employees that they don't need to have driving all over the place and coming in. I hate this because I just accepted a position. I've been self-employed my entire life, and I was looking forward to the office environment, joining a team. I was joining a startup where there's more people around, and the third day of me going into that office, getting my life set up, we're kicked out, and I've been back home by myself. But there are so many people that can do this work from home that could save on these, renewable resources, driving emissions, costing money and stuff like that. It's just, all that to say, I'm very curious to see how the world adapts, because this has changed so much and there's so much still going on. And I don't even know what feelings I have yet or what side I'm on, or, but I just know there's going to be a massive change in a lot of areas. And so the thing I hope the most is that people realize, like, oh no, I need to look out for me, and that people are more prepared going forward.
That's the whole thing, because we all feel, invincible in a certain way because we have it good. And it's almost like, I was just thinking the other day, what did I take for granted before that I'm going to be so grateful for when we go back to whatever, normal is the normal that we'll have to accept.
Yeah. The gym, man. Oh my God. I'm freaking out over here. Like it's the way that I get I'm not able to sleep because I have so much going on in my brain. And if I just go to the gym, and I'm not like this huge gym rat or anything, but if I can just like bang some bars around, I feel less aggressive. My my anger threshold or frustration is so much lower. My patience is higher. My sleep is so much better. My appetite is more accurate. Like, I'm not just,
well, you just feel good. It releases all those endorphins. I know. I just started. I was big into the gym about a year ago. I stopped. Got busy and well, really lazy is probably the better word. But I just joined again in January and really got this routine going. I got a buddy of mine and we started. He's like, that's the best workout, because I used to go with a friend who was a trainer. And then this happened. So I got the home gym going now, but it's like, I can't wait to go back. It's funny, on my Twitter, I just said, will you go back? Because that may be phase one. And it was 50-50, right down the middle split.
Really?
Some people are in a rush to go back. Some people are going to wait it out a little bit. I probably am going to wait it out just a little bit, see what kind of social distancing, safe practices they do. But
I'll be banging bars day one. The second they allow me. Yeah. See, I live downtown in a condo, so I don't have a place. I actually own a set of plates and a barbell, but I have nowhere to put it. And that's part of me being this like downtown guy with stuff like this. It's made me rethink my like very firm stance on, I don't want to own a house. And now I'm like, man, a garage and a place to lift my own weights. But then I'm like, windows and people can get in and mowing lawn. So there's this like, plus minus or whatever.
There totally is. I was thinking the same thing about, I miss downtown. I love downtown. It's great. But I wanted to go and buy a house. I'm up in New Albany, and I mean, it's great having some room and stuff like that, especially right now. But then it's like, I kind of miss the convenience. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier too. I mean, there's a lot, especially for younger people, if you're not married, if you're single, or if you're new to a city, the best way to get in on a place like Columbus especially is to live in a place like downtown.
Yeah, right now it's dead though. There's no convenience or there's no benefit to living here right now. It's just a ghost town, which is a bummer.
No, but listen, I follow some photographers in New York City, and they were showing iconic streets like up toward the Radio City Music Hall and Times Square, and that stretch of Park Avenue looking at the MetLife building. And I mean, it looks like the middle of a zombie movie. Yeah. I mean, this is everywhere right now. So hopefully things will get back to normal as quick as we can. But right now, and that's going to kind of bring me to what I want to talk to you about a little bit, is what you're doing and partnering with, because obviously everybody's in need right now. Everybody wants, money for, whether it's people that can't afford food or people that don't have access to fresh food or hand sanitizer. So I'm going to start off because what you guys are doing and what you're doing partnering is great. The first thing I want to talk about is the Columbus Will See It Through camp flags. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. This was the third or fourth project kind of down the line from when this whole thing started. But this one specifically, we had done a couple of other things, and I just I was shooting what was supposed to be a documentary right before this happened. I went to all 31 NHL arenas in 31 days with a buddy.
Oh, wow.
And we partnered with this company called Violent Gentlemen out in Orange County. They're like a hockey club. They make rad shirts. Just some of the best dudes. I have such fun hanging out with them. In their office, they have a tattoo artist who also shares the office with them. And he's like one of those guys that you meet and you're just like, man, he is so much cooler than I will ever be. And everything he does is just cool. And I started following him because we were there, at the office, and I see his posts from time to time. And he posted a photo of a banner that said "Together we'll see it through" or something like that. And I was like, man, that thing's cool. So I'm doing a little research. I find the guys who made it. It was a company called Oxford Pennant in Buffalo, New York. I reached out to a couple buddies here that make similar stuff, and both of them were basically like, we don't have the capacity to do it. But I was trying to find somebody here that I could partner with. I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I saw what you guys did. I love it. I wanted to do something similar. I just wanted to, reach out and just talk to you basically. And he was like he was rad, but he was very thankful that I didn't just take the idea and run with it. And I ran a clothing company for almost 15 years, and having every store steal our stuff, I knew what that was like. So I wanted to reach out and talk to him. It's like, you made something cool, let's make it together rather than me just make my own or steal it. And so we talked for a little bit about different ways, and we settled on he'll just make them. We'll make it Columbus specific. We designed it, put the Ohio logo on there, and we made basically a sister version of theirs, and they're making them and I'm selling them. And so this one was more of I'm a big sports guy. We lost sports. We have nothing to be a team about. Like, being from Ohio, I'm a Giants fan because my parents grew up in New York, and I'm a diehard Giants fan. We're so bad, and I'm so pissed at how they're running that organization, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But growing up in
New York
Ohio,
here, I know all about it.
Yeah, growing up in Ohio though, my friends are Browns fans who have it much worse, and their team just finds a way to ruin everything. Yet they're in it together. You know what I mean? So
right.
With the politics and everything else that's going on, everybody disagreeing, and so they're all in the shit, but they're fighting with each other. I wanted something that we could be all in the shit, but still be a team, like the Browns. Like, we're not going to win, but we're going to enjoy our company, and we're going to get through it. So that's what
there's something to be said for that. I mean, it's loyalty. It's loyalty to a team, and in this sense, it's kind of loyalty to the community.
Yeah, and it's like, let's stop fighting over which corrupt rich person is going to tell us what to do in a few months, and who you support and why, and stop fighting, and let's like take the human side and kind of be in it together. And so that's what this was. This was like, let's make something that we can try to raise morale with. So this was we joined up with them. And I think once we do the initial run, which we've sold a bunch of them, I think we're going to donate with them. And then I'm going to make a separate, just because everything that's going on with the World Health Organization and whatnot, I'm just going to separate from that and do something more local after we do this first run.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
You don't want it, because that is something, I mean, you don't want it, like you say, don't want it political, but that almost becomes a little controversial just because of everything going on.
Yeah, and they were already donating to that before everything happened. And I don't, like I said, I'm not going to take a side. And I'm like, people, if you're coming about something like this and you want to fight over the World Health, like, you're just being an asshole. Like, you're not helping anyone. And so we're going to just take that away from it, because we've donated to so many other local people that we could just give the money locally and then not give these people who, and it's such a small percentage, but they're so loud and annoying. And so we're gonna move on from that once this initial, I think the end of this week is the first batch, and then we've oversold that, and they're super swamped right now. So we're just trying to get everything out with the delays in people, and they can't be in their office, so they're making it at home and stuff like that. People have been really understanding so far with delays in orders, because there's some that are like 2 weeks late so far. And
you can't have these production houses. You can't have even a small office right now. It has to be, like you said,
or maybe not 2 weeks, but we're probably like 10 days late on some, I think, maybe the first orders. But yeah, so I'm just trying to get it out there as quickly as possible. I want it to be in windows. I want people to see it. And I want to be able to, if you're driving around, if you have to go somewhere, walking around, seeing that and being like, yeah, like a good feeling, rather than seeing a political flag or something else that's so divisive. Right. That was the point of that campaign,
And it's
basically.
something local. I mean, listen, I think it's dope. It's great. I think, and by the way, I want to remind people too, if you're listening to this, go to the YouTube page and my Facebook page, because we're going to have the links and I'm going to show you what the flag looks like. So people that are listening, this is going to be a video as well. People that are watching already know that, but there'll be links really to your page, onlyincbus.com. And I have all the links up there for that. And the other things we're going to talk about too, like the hand sanitizer, because that is going to be going to something completely local.
Yeah. So it all started with the shirt. I'll just go back to the beginning because that makes the timeline makes a little bit more sense that way. I ran a clothing company forever with one of my best friends right out of high school. Actually in high school, I think I had the idea, and this is back before the barrier of entry of making a t-shirt is so low that in order to actually stand out, you have to have something, a story, a reason, whatever. And that's where I really learned branding was all of that. We shut that down at the end of 2018, maybe 19, whatever, it doesn't matter. We shut that down, but I still have all of that pipeline, all those resources in place. So as soon as this went down, I called a couple buddies actually, and I was like, hey, I want to do something. Who needs it the most? Like, obviously people are out of work right away, and I have a ton of friends in the service industry that are just instantly not making money. And he was like, food is, food and water. That's the essentials. And so I called a couple people, and then I called the Mid-Ohio Food Bank, and I was like, what do you guys need? And they told me for every $1 donated, they can distribute $9 worth of food. So I was like, all right, I can make a shirt, made a shirt overnight. And we had it up and selling before the bars and stuff, I think, were even shut down, or maybe the day the bars were shut down. And that was just like, it wasn't this huge process. There wasn't a board. There weren't approvals. It was, we've made shirts that sold before. Let's make a shirt that represents, the unity in Columbus, and let's put it up. We sold over 700 of them and donated 100% of the profits. We kept none of the money. We had a fulfillment company. And so that was another thing, people getting mad. So my shop is in Glendale, Arizona. I've worked with him for over a decade. I was able to send him a design, and he knew exactly what to do and fulfill the orders in 10 minutes rather than trying to find a local company that could beat my prices, who couldn't, spend all that time trying to communicate back and forth how this screen process works, getting them art file, you know what I mean? Setting up all of the shipping and then shipping,
like they had their deal. They had everything
we've done
already set.
And we were able to get them for cheaper so we could donate more money, and then we got it launched. And so I had a couple of people come at me. I mean, again, it was probably 2 out of like hundreds of thousands of people that saw the site. And they were like, why don't you use a local company? And I'm like, well, because we already had this. And all the money went to the food bank. We've donated with matches well over $10,000 to them.
So, I mean, really what you've done, you're giving back to the community so much anyway. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to use a local company, but you got something, the turnaround time seemed like it was just so much more worth it anyway.
Yeah. And so I don't take the time to explain that to somebody, but that's like really frustrating on your end to be like, how can I support my city and then have people that mentality? And that's what I want to alleviate with like the flags and stuff like that, is like, let's look at the human side and let's look at the good rather than try to pick. Everybody's trying to find one thing to be mad about. And it's like, I'm sorry, like if you're mad about that. And I told him, I was like, send over, the local person that you think we could work with, and no one ever responds, or they just want to complain.
And in the time that you're wasting doing that, that's more donations. That's more shirts you can get out.
And so I don't want this to sound super negative. Sorry, I've got a lot of like pent up. People have been coming at me for like a couple weeks now. And like I said, people, it's like 5 out of the, and you only remember the negatives because tons of people have been super positive. And some people have bought multiple shirts and been like, just donate them to like people that need them, stuff like that. And they don't even want the shirt.
I understand, because I work in TV, and I'll get, somebody taking the time to write a compliment. Hey, I like watching you, or thanks for your coverage.
Yeah.
1 out of 100. But people that will complain, especially when I work for affiliates where I interrupt Jeopardy because there's a tornado barreling down on your house. You'll get that. So I get it. People will always find the time to complain, but it takes a lot more energy to give a compliment. So I totally get where you're coming from.
We also put up a link with the shirt. So it was like, you can buy the shirt and we'll donate the proceeds, or you can just give money. And there was a large amount of people who just donated money and didn't take a shirt. But yeah, so that was like in a couple of weeks, we raised well over $10,000 with matches. We had a couple people who matched some donations, and we sold over 700 of those shirts. They're still available right now, but they've slowed down a little bit. And then I'll
put the link up for that too.
Yeah, cool. Please do. And that was just kind of like, what resource do I have? I call it an advantage. So when you're starting a business, if you want to start a business, you have to have some sort of reason, or like I said, I call it an advantage. What can you buy cheaper? What do you know? There has to be something that gives you a reason to like how you can profit. If you just buy the same thing somebody else bought and then sell it. For example, I bought a book recently that, I mean, I don't know the answer, but local bookstores are selling a book for $25 and then you got to pay for shipping. And then Amazon's got it for $6. You know, their advantage is that they don't have a retail, you know, all that stuff. And unfortunately that's where it's going. But if you want to start a business, you have to find your advantage. For me, we have that entire infrastructure of t-shirts. We could put one out in 5 minutes. So we just did it. Went really well. It was cool. And then the sanitizer I met with, so the High Bank guys are some friends of mine. And I was talking with them about just what was going on and how, you know, how they're losing all of their revenue basically. And they were distilling alcohol for sanitizer now. And so I was like, I want to get that story out. And we ended up partnering with them and we made our own edition of it. So I think we had 1,000 bottles over 2 separate releases. And basically you could buy a bottle for yourself and then you were buying 2 bottles for every bottle you bought. You keep one, we donate the other one. And the first time we gave them all to a nursing home right here by my house that had nothing for they have all their employees, wow. I can't remember the average age of the resident, but it was very much so in that bracket of older people are more susceptible. Sure. And so we donated 250 bottles to them after the first launch. And then we just donated yesterday or the day before to the Northside Food Pantry on 5th. And then the Center of Hope, I think it's called.
Central of Hope Food Bank, yeah.
So Adam Hines from High Bank set up the second round. He had some stuff, some people that were reaching out, and I was like, I'm not like attached to anything, just get it to who needs it. And so we did 2 runs of those. I think there might be like 20 bottles left from the second one. The first one sold out in like 3 hours, so those were all gone really fast. The second one we launched on Tuesday of this week, I believe, of last week or Wednesday or something like that. There might be like 20 bottles left. But we just donated the other 250. So we've donated 500 of those to
So are they going to be making more, or is that it for right now?
He's been hitting me up when they can get resources. The problem is everybody's trying to buy the things that you need to make this. And again, that none of that money went to me. We didn't ship it just because we didn't have the money to ship. It was just local pickup. You buy one and the money went to High Bank to cover the cost of making it and then try to help keep them alive, you know?
Well, I love the buy one, donate one. So I'm going to put the link up there too for anybody that's watching this or anybody that wants to go to my video there, because if they are able to get the resources for it, because who knows how long we're going to, you know, this is going to last for a while, I'm pretty sure. This way they can be ordered online, but they can also go pick them up. There are some limited hours once they do get them back in stock.
Yeah, it's Tuesday through Saturday from noon to 8 p.m. And I'm down to do any of that kind of stuff too. Anybody that reaches out that we can make something like that happen. I knew those guys really well. We actually did a podcast together, and on the podcast we talked about, and I was like, is there something we can do? You know, we have the audience and people need it. I've been looking into face masks. I think I just put a poll up the other day about, is it too late? And the company that I'm trying to work with to get them here, because I was trying to find a made in America washable cotton. And it's just, for some reason, the process has been so, like, over 5 days of emails.
It's tough trying to find. I will say the washables are probably going to end up being better because people need to realize not to reuse those disposable ones, those ones that you can get those packs of. I know Walmart was selling a pack of 20 for like $20, but you can't save them. Those, if they catch any of the germs or the viruses or even allergens, pollens, dust, and you can't wash those will fall apart. Those have to be disposed.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, so we did that. That was just kind of like a lot of these have just been, what can we do? Let's do it, rather than, super well planned or thought out. And they've all worked really well. There was, I think, so what did we sell? 5,000 bottles at $10 a bottle or something like that, and gave that all away as well. So it's been fun to try to use the reach for good rather than, just a personal thing. We do have some bags that we made that were I made with this company called Apollos, who does like cruelty free. They have like these people who have been pulled from these terrible situations. They give them fair wages and profit sharing and stuff like that, and they hand make these bags. And I have those on my site, which I purchased wholesale from them, and I'm selling them. So there are, some of those have sold because of the people in the traffic and whatnot. So it's not entirely without any benefit, and obviously I want to help, right. But there is like obviously some stuff that you can do to support Onlyincbus as well. But most of the stuff is just, we're not trying to, profiteer off of somebody in a terrible situation. We're just like,
Oh,
hey,
no.
providing
Well,
a
what's great
conduit.
is you guys are such you exploit, and I use that word in a good way. You exploit what's good and great about this community, and your social media. I mean, it takes a lot of effort for anybody that's trying to build a brand to get that first 1,000 people to follow them. And
Yeah.
here you are now on Instagram at nearly, I think I checked this morning, 74.7K. How long did it take you to get to that?
So I started this whole project in 2015, end of maybe middle of 15. It was at the beginning. It was like one of those projects that you're like, I'll do this, and it was just kind of off and on. When I sold the agency, we were doing pretty well with it, but I didn't really start putting real focus into it until about 2 years ago. And before that, we were still doing some good. I think the content was not as quality. I mean, I've been doing social media since social media existed, and there's just three things. You got to have a theme, and if somebody comes to your page, even now more so than ever, you got to have a very clear, defined theme. Like a second I get to your page, I need to know what this page represents and why I would follow it. And if I don't, a person can be a theme, but those are very difficult, because if you're like me and you're into things from different worlds, like, I'm complaining about the NFL, but I also like Mark Rothko, so I'm like, the art community and the NFL community don't tend to merge very often, or
Right.
different musicians, or different, like, reading, like movies, just so many things. So mine can be confusing, but Columbus is a clear defined theme. And then you got to post content consistently, and it's got to be high quality content. And so
Right.
what I've been is just a proof that system works, and that it's not, you don't fake it. There's no cheating. You just do it. You do the thing correctly. It's like working out. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, you can't not lift and eat pizza every day and think you're going to get ripped. You need to put out content, and people do it for a week and be like, oh, I did it for a week. Didn't work. Years of consistency, and there's ways you can pay for stuff. Obviously advertising is something you can do, but to have a real, genuine following, you got to provide them with content consistently. And like I call them thumb stoppers. It's got to be something worth looking at. And if your content's not compelling, if you're trying to sell your bullshit all the time, people are going to see that,
Well, what hooked me on your page originally too was the photography that, the photographers that you share, and the people that you give credit to, because we have some amazing people in this city that do so much with, especially downtown and those iconic places around Columbus. It's pretty amazing. I mean, they just take, and there's some effects and things like that, but I mean, the pride for this city that is shared on your page, it's pretty amazing. And like I said, we have some amazing photographers here that you constantly share. So that kind of made me stop on yours.
Nice.
Actually, I started following yours when I knew I was going to move here, because I was trying to go through and look. So
I get a lot of questions about that. People are like, I'm moving. Where should I go? What should I eat? And just real quick, the UGC, or user generated content, is something you hear a lot in this space. And there's ways you could do it correctly, and there's ways you can do it poorly. And one thing that there's a bunch of photographers over the years that I've kind of built up an arsenal of guys that continue to provide content in exchange for them getting a platform. And there's being a creator, there's this terrible thing where people are like, oh, do this job for me and you'll get exposure. In our case, this is work that they're doing already. I'm not hiring them to do the work for me, but when I find their good work, I'm sharing it and then getting them jobs because of it. So the UGC side of this is I'm able to, because I'm being a photographer myself, I'm able to then pool so much more content. And rather than trying to make it about me, making sure that each time we use content from somebody else, it's like, look who did this in this city. And so you're able to kind of build that community. And then there's a bunch of guys that have contributed to the page who have then got work from it, which is great. I'd love to kind of stimulate that local economy as well. And so it's like using the user generated content to their advantage rather than exploiting their hard work for yourself.
Well, and that's how you kind of grow things organically on both ends, I think. And
there's a lot of pages that have got really big because of it. Like around here.
I think it's more effective than advertising.
Yeah, absolutely.
Advertising.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If you create good content and the people know what they're coming to see, every follower can be you're advertising to that follower. But rather than paying to show them something they don't want to see, they're subscribing to see something that they know you're going to provide that they do want to see, and that's so much more valuable than just trying to peddle your bullshit on people.
Exactly. Well, listen, Tim. Before we go, I'm starting something with this. Obviously, this whole podcast is kind of new, but I'm starting something rapid fire, which is basically just a quick couple of questions before we leave,
Okay.
and it just has to do with what's going on right now, and that'll change obviously as things continue to change. First question, you might have answered this already, but what is the first thing that you couldn't do while we're sheltered in place now that you're going to do as soon as that lifts?
Yeah, the gym, man. I need to be
Yeah,
active.
I knew it.
I want to play basketball. I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I feel like I'm in solitary confinement, honestly. So I tell people.
I mean, we're all there. I think. I mean, the other thing is, and being a meteorologist, I'm looking at what the average temperature is and what our average number of days we should have sunshine, and I'm like, come on, give us something here.
It's beautiful out there right now. I can see.
Today, as we're recording this, it's beautiful, but we went from like 75 degrees last week to 28 degrees the other day.
Some
So
snow.
we need some consistency because I mean, yeah, if the gym's not open now, just getting outside is something I think that we'd like to take advantage of, especially now as we're turning the corner on late April. Last question: have you binge watched anything while you've been at home these last couple of weeks?
Here's my problem. I stare at a screen all day while I work, and I love watching movies and shows. So by the time I get to watching another screen, I almost like can't do it anymore. But I'm not a big video game guy, but I've been getting into this Call of Duty craze that everybody's into.
So have I.
And then I've been watching films, either old classics, not old, but like 90s, 2000s, these highly critically acclaimed movies that I never watched. Like I watched The Talented Mr. Ripley yesterday or 2 days ago, which I'd never seen before. It's got like Matt Damon and
that's a great movie.
Gwyneth Paltrow and Jude Law and stuff like that. So I've been trying to like expand my, so because I love film and I love TV shows, and there's a ton of good TV shows. But if I go to a TV show, I'm just watching The Office over and over and over again. I just it feels good.
Office.
And it makes me feel like things are normal when I watch that for some reason.
I just binged The Office about maybe about a year and a half ago. So I was ready to start again, but then somebody was saying you got to watch Parks and Rec.
Oh, it's incredible.
I've never seen Parks and Rec.
Oh yeah, watch that then. It's so good. It was meant to be.
Season 1 I heard is a little slow.
It was meant to be in the same universe as The Office, and then it becomes its own. So there's some kind of. I mean, yeah, just watch it. It's incredible. By the time you get done, the characters are phenomenal. The writing's phenomenal. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is another one that just is always good. That and Superstore on I think
Superstore.
NBC.
I love Superstore. Yeah,
Just
Superstore's
incredible writing. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine is just. I've watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine at least 3 or 4 times through, just because it's so good. It's so well written.
Well, you're giving us people that may have not watched any of these.
Yeah, watch them all.
Some things to fill their time with. Listen, Tim, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me today, talking about Columbus in general, talking about the good things that you're doing. I'm going to put up all the links. I'm going to put up your website. Again, it's onlyincbus.com. Follow you on Instagram. Do you have you guys use Facebook, Twitter as well?
Yeah. It's Onlyincbus on all of them.
Okay, great. Well, it's easy right across the board. All right, Tim, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's a wrap on episode 2 of Just Press Pause. Again, special thanks to Tim Trad for joining me today, talking about some really great things and really great ways that you can help out Columbus. Remember, the links for not just the hand sanitizers, the t-shirts, but also the camp flags can be found in the description of the YouTube video. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe button on the bottom right as well for future episodes. Not just Columbus, not just Ohio, but really, we've got some people scheduled from around the world. So really excited about continuing this here at Just Press Pause. I'm Andrew Kozak. Remember to follow me at Andrew Kozak TV on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on Snapchat. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.